Hey everybody, I wanted to thank you for coming out. I'm Courtney Allen, Superintendent of the Water Department. This is part of our outreach to try to get some information about the water restrictions and the current status of the reservoirs out there. I'm just going to give a quick brief overview and then feel free for any questions, and if I can't answer it tonight, I can certainly answer it pretty quickly. So what we have for our current drought status for the state is Tuesday afternoon, the state moved southeast region along with basically everybody except for Western Mass and the Outer Cape and Islands into a level 3 drought. What a level 3 drought is an extended period without rain. When you look at this year, we have average rainfall for 1 month out of the entire year, which was February. The rest of the year we've seen well below average since July 1st. Our typical year, we'd probably see about 6 inches of rain. This year, we've seen less than 2. So things are pretty rough. The other way the state determines drought status, they will look at, again, the rainfall. They look at the last 100 years. We are 7th percentile on level. Not 7th lowest year, 7th percentile, which means almost every single year in the last 100 years has rained more than this one. They also look at stream flows, natural lakes, not things that we're using as a reservoir because those we manage and move the water around ourselves, but natural rivers. They'll look at the major river of the Taunton, the 10 Mile, and those river and lake levels are currently at 10%, so 10th percentile over the last 100 years, so almost every year has been lower than this. We've been seeing it here in Attleboro. It's been low. We plan for this. We do pay attention to the state, but we also plan ahead. Last month we were in that level 2, where level 2 drought status is kind of, let's keep an eye on it. We jumped to level 3 in anticipation of this happening last weekend. And the reason for that, I don't know how many of you drive up Route 1 into North Attleboro at the start of Nate Whipple Highway to go into Cumberland. That is Hoppin Hill Reservoir right at that corner there. That's the northernmost reservoir in our 10-mile system that feeds our larger plant. It's currently basically empty. It holds 23 feet of water, which is about 200 million gallons. And right now it's holding 3 feet, which is estimated about 20 million gallons left there. We're not using that reservoir right now. We're using Manchester, which is the big one up on the highway. However, that Hoppin Hill Reservoir is what we will use to refill Manchester in the fall and in the winter so that we can use it for next year. So we put the restrictions in place. The biggest gap we see between winter and summer is that lawn watering. I mean, if you think about it, you go into your house, your day-to-day through the course of the year, you're not really using much more water indoors than you are between the winter and summer. So that big gap is, the bulk of it is lawn watering. We all love a beautiful lush lawn. I had a golf course out there until this summer. It was beautiful. I shut my own sprinkler off at home down in Rhode Island. And we do love grass and we do love flowers. However, when you look at the purposes of actually having a public water system, we have 3 major things that we're there for. Our most major thing is firefighting. That is number 1. Number 2 is sanitary use, water to use in your bathroom. Number 3, believe it or not, is actually drinking. So, you know, there's your order. We're okay for the summer. Manchester will last. We have another smaller plant up in Mansfield. Those reservoir systems will last through this summer. The issue is if we don't preserve them now, we may not be able to refill them for next summer. So that's what we're actually doing now. We want the ability to be able to fight a fire. We want the ability to use our bathrooms like we do every day. So we're not at the point yet where it's scary, but we don't want to be. So that's kind of our purpose for being as strict as we are. There are other local departments right in our general area that One of them actually shares our northern watershed that have also gone into full restriction. So we're not alone in Attleboro. And we don't want to let it go any further than we should. There is a town in central Mass that their lack of water has gotten to the point where they cannot fight a fire. They have to call for mutual aid and actually truck it in water. So this, because their system can't handle it, and we don't want to be the next one doing that. I've seen a lot of questions online about the fines and about reporting of water use when you see it. And I think some people are taking the fines and, you know, neighbors maybe reporting each other, or someone just driving to work and seeing a bunch of houses watering at, you know, midnight or whatever. I've seen a lot about snitching. We're not really looking at it that way. It's important. It's a way to curtail use. The fines are out there, not as punishment. They're not as to be nasty. They're out there as a deterrent. The reason, and I know the mayors have basically put it exactly this way, please tell on your neighbors. And it's not to be nasty. It's, again, there's 31 staff in my department. 19 spend all or a good portion of their time out in the field. So we're not actually looking for people watering, but when we see them, we're reporting them too. But again, we have 19 out in the fields. There's 47,000 roughly other sets of eyes if we ask the public. So it's basically asking for help. It's not tattling, and we just want to point out to not look at it that way. So that's my broad overview. If anyone has questions.
I have several.
I figured you did, that's why I looked this way.
What is the city going to do to increase their water supply? The situation is not going to get any better. You've got a lot of building coming down the pike. You've got 300 condos going in the South Attleboro golf course. You've got hundreds more in the center of town in these old factories, plus the regular building that's going on. So there's going to be a lot more demand on the water system. And with the climate change, I mean, things ain't getting better. It's only going to stay like it is or get worse.
Right. I can answer that a couple different ways. Some of it comes down to new water permits. We have two plants, two separate reservoir systems. We have a withdrawal permit through the state for both of them separately. For the smaller reservoir system up in Mansfield, our permit renewed last year. And in that permit, there is a requirement for mandatory summer restrictions. And until this year, and this is something a lot of departments did, that restriction can be anything you want. It can be what we typically do outside of the hours of 9 and 5. You can use irrigation, and the rest of the entire day you can handheld water. Some departments did an uneven. If you live at, 1 Main Street, you can water on odd days of the month. If you live at number 2 Main Street, you can water at even days of the month. In general, the thought process, and this is statewide, this wasn't just us, is the state put these in our restrictions, and they're May to September, and in May you have plenty of water. So everybody would set it up so they could still sell. Next year we are changing that. There's a start. There is going to be, starting that May 1st all the way through September 30th, is nothing outdoor between 9 and 5. So already our mandatory restrictions, whether or not we need them, are going to be a little bit different. So that'll kind of curtail some of the summer water use. So that's number one. That's quick and easy. The notice will be different. The other thing that we are looking at, and you've been involved with this as well, For many years, and this is going back to the last drought in 2016, we have been looking at an interconnection with Pawtucket Water Department. We have existing water connections with 3 other local water systems. They're meant as short-term emergencies to get us through a main break, a temporary shut-off of a plant, something very short, because all of these systems are smaller than us. We looked at Pawtucket because the reservoir system is huge. It dwarfs ours. Their plant is oversized, everything is oversized, and they were willing to sell and they can handle it. It's been a very many years process. It originally started out as we need water right now back in 2016, and then it started raining. And the state took away that emergency approval and said, okay, if you're going to need this in the future, you're going to build a pumping station. So we had a couple years of design, and there were issues. Again, you're on NBC. There were issues with land taking. It took a couple times through DEP to be able to permit what was designed. The project went out to bid in May, and the sole bidder, the bidding environment right now is terrible. It's post-COVID. There's issues with employers retaining staff, hiring staff in the first place. Material costs are through the roof. Lead times for even small materials are through the roof. We ordered, for an example, we ordered fire hydrants March 1st. Normally it would take us less than a week to get them in. We're still waiting for 6 fire hydrants. The lead times have gotten that bad. So back to the bid. The bidding environment isn't great. A project this size, we'd usually expect maybe a half a dozen bidders. We got one sole bidder, and it was the bid cost was twice the amount of funding that was available. So we're looking back into that. Ways to cut costs, ways to cut risk to the contractors, that the potential bidders for the project, to be able to get the more interest in the project. The sole bidder basically told us the price was this high because of the risk of putting the money out there for the materials and not being able to get them in for close to a year and a half. But we're doing everything in our power to move that ahead. If that station were in place today, we would be using it, potentially. We're still seeing how Saturday's restrictions are curtailing water use. Over the first couple days of the full restrictions, we saw production from the plants go down about 25%, which is good. We're still seeing it trend down more. I personally would also feel better if that Pawtucket connection was there, because if production isn't curtailed and it doesn't start raining, that connection will be able to eventually get us 1 million gallons a day when needed. Rhode Island's in drought status. There is no water restrictions in Pawtucket. People are watering all over the place, and there is no warning not to do it. So it would be there. We were hoping that station would be in next spring, and now the new hope with basically, unfortunately getting some extra money into the project and taking some of the purchase of materials onto the city instead of the contractor, the hope is we can get that station in within the next 2 years. You look like you have more.
That's not really that's going to be for emergency use only.
Yes.
The city needs to find another water source or expand the ones that they have. I know it's going to take a long time, it's going to take a whole lot of money, but we can't sit on our hands, and it's going to take years for this, as you know, to come into the fold.
It is. We have started looking at potential dredging of some of the reservoirs There is potential for dredging at Manchester. That is many, many, many more years out than Pawtucket would be, at a much, much higher expense between permitting, and you also have to remember when you're dredging a reservoir, this has to be planned very, very, very well, because the reservoir either has to be totally empty, depending on the size of the reservoir, or they coffer dam off portions and dredge out. It is something we're looking at, but a dredging project, you're looking at closer to probably 5 years, unfortunately. And yeah, climate change is real. There's a lot of speculation on what's causing it, but we all do see the hot weather, we all see the droughts, we see it every day in our field. It doesn't just drizzle anymore. We get what we see outside right now, which is hot, 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 and no rain, or it all comes at once. And when that happens, we actually don't have the ability to store it, because it tends to come when everything's already full. But it is something we're looking at.
How deep is that reservoir?
Which one?
Manchester.
Manchester is about 25 feet. 25 feet. Currently, full is 146.2 over sea level. Current measurements are 141.8. So we're in pretty good shape there. It's not going to run out just yet. It's the ability to refill it over the winter is what we're really, really looking at.
Yeah, I have a kind of a specific question. You talked about how little rain we've had, but how much rain do we have to get to make up the deficit? How short are we in rainfall by inches?
We're currently short about 9 inches for the year.
Okay. And then how many inches of rain will we have to get in order to be able to shut down the Wading River plant? I live in Ward 3A. I'm buying water to drink because I don't want to be drinking that contaminated water.
Right. Wading River. All right, let me start with the way droughts kind of work. To recover from a drought, it can take at least as long, and usually does take at least as long as it took to get into it, unfortunately.
So it's not just a matter of inches falling?
It's not. It depends on the heat. When you have, thank God the weather's broken, when you have heat like we did the last couple months, actually, and repeated heat waves, you have to look at some of the reservoir water is evaporating. So there's use whether or not somebody's using it. It's going to depend on how far we can get residential and business use down. When we do full outdoor water restrictions like this, basically what we want to do is get our production down to winter use, which we're not there yet. It is trending down as the word gets out. I wish I had better news than that. We are in design for temporary treatment up at Wading River that we're looking at potential that it will be in place and operational in March to early April. And basically that will take that PFAS number there that we have, and it will take it down to 0. So there's an end in sight. I really wish I could tell you we could shut down the plant. We can't, unfortunately.
We need it. Yeah. Okay. So I'll invest in Poland Spring, make some money and buy a car.
I'm sorry.
So we're going to need at least 9 inches in order to make up the deficit.
At least.
Okay. Hopefully not 24 hours.
No, hopefully, we need 9 inches over a couple weeks, is we're all crossing our fingers for it, so.
I'll put my order in.
So you mentioned the pumping station and that there are some hurdles to cross in terms of moving things along. We as a community, are there things we can do, is like talk to our state reps and say, hey, this is a priority. What sorts of channels do we need to go through to help push the momentum forward?
You're talking the Pawtucket interconnection? Yeah, unfortunately, the limiting factor on that is it's basically going to be set up like a mini treatment plant. A couple smaller pumps, some chemical addition because Pawtucket adds the same treatment chemicals we do, just in smaller amounts, so we'll have to add some. Some valving and a couple hydrants. This mini station is basically built off-site somewhere else. And that is the limiting factor here, is the lead time on that. So there's not much we can do besides hurry up and order it at our point. We are looking to go to City Council. You can certainly reach out to council if you're supportive of the station. The bulk of them definitely are supportive, but you know, the limiting factor is basically getting the borrowing money out and available for us to use to be able to order the station and get it started to be built. The lead time, again, for that right now is 14 to 16 months. So no matter what we do elsewise, we really can't get it any quicker than that year and a half.
So if you go to city council, would it help having people, around you in the audience on that day?
Yes, it would. There is going to be either the September or the October. During September or October, there will be a public meeting relative to a borrowing for that emergency connection. And yes, we appreciate certainly the support, and they appreciate knowing public opinion. They don't really know unless somebody reaches out.
I stole Jerry's questions, I'm sorry. He said he had 10.
Okay. Do I have any other questions?
But how else do we expand our, there must be ways other than dredging to expand our ultimate water supply.
There are a couple other ways. Again, you have emergency interconnections, you have dredging. There was a conceptual plan, oh my gosh, I probably need to go back to the 70s. I don't think I was born yet when this thing was done. Of the city retains water rights to groundwater rights, actually. Excuse me, I'll hang on a minute. Is it just one? Okay. The city retains water rights to the Bungay on Holden and Bank Street. Way back in the day, Attleboro was a groundwater system, at least down in the Attleboro end, not in Mansfield. And there was a lot of well decommissioning and removal of equipment when the new plant went in, because it was designed to treat surface water instead. Back in the day, it was proposed to use these well sites to fill Manchester. When you get into that, it is possible. It's probably quicker and easier to dredge a reservoir. And here is why. You're taking groundwater, you're putting it into a surface water system. You're crossing water types. Groundwater and surface water are two different animals in the regulation world. You're looking at bringing water from one river to another, which takes a long time for permitting. It's not impossible. And the other issue there is the rights to that water is still there. The equipment is not. Everything was decommissioned and removed in the early 90s. It would have to be all new. But it is also a possibility. And we would use that potentially, like on a year like this, if the Bungay River didn't dry up too, to refill Manchester in the winter instead of using Hoppin Hill.
I have another question.
Sure.
So the city's allowing people to irrigate if they have well water. But well water is taking water from the aquifer.
From there.
So why are we allowing that if it's so crucial?
Well water for drinking falls completely under the health department. For groundwater, we per ordinance don't currently have authority. If the drought level moved to a level 4, we can get in touch with the state and shut down the wells. We would have to declare a state of emergency, a complete state of emergency, which means we cannot make demand. It means we have more water going out than we have in storage at all. And it is, there is a bunch of things that I am looking at the state level. That is actually one of them. Another one, and this has come up at council, and it's actually come up all over Facebook, the building. And the building itself isn't the major issue. It's well, it can be during a time like this, but the major issue with no new subdivisions going in, their major use of water is, again, irrigation. It has been suggested to ban irrigation. That is a very, very hard sell. And the thing about banning irrigation systems or taxing them or anything like that is, okay, if we know they're there, a new subdivision goes in, we permit all the new irrigations. If someone doesn't want one because they don't want to pay those taxes, or they don't want us to have any authority over them, as soon as the house is in, they can, with a little know-how, can go to Home Depot and put in an irrigation system. So I don't think deterring them completely is really the way to go. I've started to talk to planning with when these subdivisions go in, hey, can we require that some part of these lots, or a good percentage of these lots, either stay wooded, rock gardens, native planting, or vegetables. At least it's useful if somebody's using the water. And instead of, having a 2-acre lot with a big, beautiful golf course of a lawn, all of a sudden you have that 2-acre lot and you have 5,000 square feet of grass. And that's a huge, huge difference. We've started looking at that. We have looked into registering of irrigations. And I will be honest, we don't know where a lot of them are now. It is an ordinance that they are supposed to be set up with rain sensors so they don't go off when it's raining. These rain sensors are supposed to be approved by myself and by the building department. I've been with the water department 17 years. I've never seen an application for a rain sensor. So I would lay odds that building probably hasn't either. So it's kind of impossible to track these out there. So I think the better way to go is leave these lots as natural as we can. There are native plants out there right now that are doing great. I have a yard full of Jerusalem artichokes. They're native, they're doing fabulous. My grass is dead, and all my other flowers are dead because they don't belong here, and they take a tremendous amount of water. So there are other ways we're looking in to be able to completely deny building. I'm not sure the city as a whole has a way to do it. For a water emergency, there would need to be a direct threat to health or to the supply. So you're looking at a level 4 drought. You're looking at, our reservoirs are really, really almost empty. You're looking at, unfortunately right now we have the Wading River plant, and again, it has problems. We all know that here. They're a health concern over a lifetime, what we have at that plant. DEP's answer was, if you're running out of water, run the plant. If we were putting out something that was an immediate risk, radium, uranium, benzene, something that would poison you and make you sick right away, we could declare an emergency and get a building moratorium. We're not quite there yet for a drought. If this repeats every summer and continues on, it is something we can look at. But for 1 year of drought, I talk to DEP a lot. What they will say is, hey, those May to September restrictions where you curtail between 9 and 5, don't let anybody water, see what your reservoir system does. Your emergency will go away. But there are ways we're looking, again, to discourage the water use out there. When you take somebody in their house, if they don't have an irrigation, your average person probably uses 40 gallons a day. With the irrigation out there, they probably use 50 to 55 over the average of a year. But those that don't irrigate use a lot less. So if we're irrigating less, I think that's a good way we can get our numbers down for future development, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, that was very long-winded. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very, very much for coming out, and have a good night.